Hey everyone, I've turned to the Reddit community for help today because the thing that has happened is just so strange and embarrassing that I highly doubt it's something my friends will be able to help me with. My family and I aren't on speaking terms right now, so this is the only place I can think of to ask for help. I am a 29-year-old female who has been living with my stepsister, a 36-year-old female, for the past 9 weeks because her house is much closer to my new workplace and the commute is much easier. I was going to look for an apartment there, but my stepsister herself suggested that I move in with her because she could do with some company. My stepsister is a really sweet person and recently got divorced from her husband of 4 years after she found out that he'd been cheating on her. The divorce came through about a year ago, and since then, she's been living by herself, so she invited me to move in. My mother, a 47-year-old female, got married to my stepfather, a 60 male, about 6 years ago after 2 years of dating, and that's how my stepsister and I became friends. We've always been close, even while our parents were dating. We'd even made a pact that even if they didn't end up together, we'd still keep in touch because we'd really taken a liking to each other. I'm referring to her as my stepsister for the sake of the post, but honestly, we've always felt connected to one another like we were real sisters all along. It sounds dramatic, but it's true, and we've even had discussions about it in the past, so I know that even she felt the same way about me and considered me her little sister. So moving in with her seemed like a good idea to both of us, and it was quite fun while it lasted. I'd also noticed that for the last 3 weeks or so, my stepsister had been using her phone a lot and refused to go anywhere without it, which was weird because she hadn't been this obsessed before. I'd also occasionally find her smiling or even giggling at her phone while she texted away, so I knew that she must have been talking to someone. I wanted to ask her about it, but I found myself to be a little too busy initially since I'd just started working at my new office and they'd already given me a pretty big client to handle, so with work I didn't have the time to sit and gossip with my stepsister. It'd be straight to work, then back home, after which I'd just have dinner and then crash. But 2 weeks ago, I had a really bad cold and decided to take a day off to recover at home. Coincidentally, my stepsister had also been feeling a little under the weather that day and decided to come back home early. We ordered soup and decided to watch some movies, and while we were on the couch, her phone vibrated again and she picked it up to start chatting again. I took that opportunity to finally ask her about her special guy, and she seemed surprised that I knew it was a guy without her even telling me about it, but of course, she'd been smiling and giggling like crazy, so it just had to be someone she was interested in. After a few minutes of teasing and her hesitating, she finally confessed that she'd downloaded a dating app a couple of months ago. She hadn't had much luck on the app for the first few weeks, but then she matched with this older man who was just the perfect guy for her. She gushed about this mystery man of hers for a while and then told me that she'd been dying to tell me, but didn't because she was skeptical of what I'd think of her if she told me that she was on a dating app, even less than a year after her divorce. In fact, not just me, but she hadn't told anyone at all because she was afraid people wouldn't like it. So I instantly switched to my supportive mode and tried to make her feel less embarrassed of her decision because after all, she deserved to be happy. Her ex-husband had remarried already, so it didn't feel fair that she still had to be embarrassed about trying to move on. I told her that all she should have cared about was her own happiness and peace of mind and to screw what everyone else thought. And that seemed to help. It was all going so well until she showed me the picture of the guy she'd been talking to. The picture of the guy she showed me was a spitting image of my estranged father, who'd cut us all off and left to live in Europe about a decade ago. It was the same face and same eyes, just a little older now than he was back then, but I could still recognize his features. He'd listed his age as 45 on the app, but I knew that he must be around 50, and I could just feel it in my heart that this must be him. There was no way my stepsister could have known that she'd matched with my father, because we never had any photos of him at our house thanks to my mother's orders. She loathed his very existence, and had collected all the photos that he was in, put them in a box, and either threw them out or kept them somewhere I'd never be able to find them. Neither of my parents was very keen on social media either, so there were hardly any pictures of my dad online anyway. After he left, he became completely untraceable online, and I never posted any pictures with my dad on social media because I was a teenager, and it'd just be too So eventually we ended up with 0 pictures of him, and my stepdad and stepsister only knew him by name, but not his face, and that's why my stepsister couldn't recognize my dad. He hadn't even told my stepsister about his past and was pretending to be someone else altogether, fake names and the works. My parents got divorced when I was just 9 years old, but they shared joint custody of me. They'd had me when they were really very young and inexperienced, and decided to get married only out of obligation but had no real love for one another. To them, this was just a college fling that went on a little too long, but despite that, they put up with each other for my sake. Unfortunately, they'd fight literally every single day over petty things and irrelevant topics, and I found myself wishing that they were divorced instead because that's how bad those fights were. It kind of put me off of marriage for the rest of my life, if I'm being really honest. When they did decide to file for divorce, I was relieved that they were finally separating. The next couple of years went by pretty easily because I'd alternate between living with my parents. These two connections are very close to both of them, and even though they hated each other, they made sure not to speak badly of one another when they were around me, and never attempted to use me against the other. 10 years passed this way, and then a couple of months before my 19th birthday, I think, my dad suddenly told me that he'd received an offer to work in Venice, and it would require him to travel a lot. It also paid well, and he'd decided to go for it because now I was older, and he didn't feel the need to stick around for my sake anymore. I wasn't too thrilled about it, but I said that I'd be okay with it nevertheless. He moved to Europe a couple of weeks later, and I was there to see him off at the airport along with my grandparents, where he promised to come back home at least once every year to meet me, but as you guys all know by now, that never happened. He moved and then cut me off entirely. No calls, no texts, and no social media contact either. He probably either blocked me or deactivated his already pretty inactive accounts on social media, and even stopped his friends and family back here from speaking to me. So everyone he knew cut me and my mother off, and we never found out what happened to him after he moved to Europe. I was miserable about it for almost a year, because I'd never seen this coming, and I had no idea what would make him do such a thing to his own daughter. And that's when my mother stepped up as a parent and did her very best to bring me out of my depression. She'd never had a cross word to say about my father earlier, but when she realized how upset I was, she went into her mama bear mode and decided to erase every trace there was of my father, so I'd find it easier to forget about what he did and how betrayed I'd felt. It did kind of help me, but I wouldn't recommend this to everyone trying to deal with an estranged parent. I don't think it's the healthiest way, but at least it helped me get over things. And now, another 10 years later, my father had finally found his way back into my life, unintentionally through my stepsister of all people. I was horrified when she showed me the guy she was talking to, and it got even worse when she told me that they were actually planning to hook up within the next couple of weeks. They'd already been talking for a long time now, but he'd had to travel out of state for work a few days after they matched. He'd be back soon, and that's when the two of them would finally meet, and that was quite a relief for me to hear, because at least the two of them hadn't met yet. I knew that I had to do something about this situation, and without thinking much, I asked her what his name was, because I was pretty sure he was going by a different name now. Sure enough, my dad had started using his middle name along with his mother's maiden name online, so it had been practically impossible for me to find him even in the recent past. And even after changing his name, the first thing he must have done after creating a social media account would have been to block me, my mother, and anyone else who was related to us. But now that I knew exactly how to find him, nothing was stopping me from reaching out to him once more, and I knew that I absolutely had to do that for the sake of closure. He didn't want to talk to me or keep in touch with me, and I knew that very well, but I couldn't just let this nag at me for the rest of my life. So after I got to know about his social media details from my stepsister, I waited 2 days and contemplated what to do next. I was struggling to think of what to say to him now that I finally could contact him. His profile didn't show up when I searched for him while using my original account, but when I made a fake profile it came up instantly, which meant that he had indeed blocked me to make sure I wouldn't be able to find him. He had a private account, so I couldn't see anything apart from his profile picture, which was him smiling from ear to ear while carrying a cat. He'd always told me he hated cats, so I was never allowed to have one, even after the divorce, because he said he wouldn't be able to stand the dander, and I don't know why, but seeing the cat is what aggravated me. So finally, after 2 days of thinking about what exactly I could say to him, I came up with the following message to send to him. Hey, Dad. I see you have a cat now, which is funny because as far as I remember, you wouldn't have been able to stand the dander, right? I wonder how many other lies you've told me over the years, but honestly, don't bother telling me now. Because I get that you're just a dishonest and disappointing man. First, you let my mom down by being a sorry excuse of a husband, and then you let me down by being a pathetic father. And you're about to let my stepsister down by lying to her about your past and even your age. Yeah, the woman you've been speaking to for the past couple of weeks is my stepsister, so I'm sorry, but your plan to keep running away from me for the rest of your life has failed miserably. I hope you're never, ever happy again because you don't deserve it. You deserve all the pain you caused me multiplied twice, and now you can disrespect and go to hell. Goodbye. I sent that message through, and when I did, I finally felt so relieved because I felt like I'd been holding it all in for ages, and now I could finally let it all go. I felt relieved, I felt satisfied with what I said, and most importantly, I felt really light and good about what I'd done, because this had finally given me some sense of closure. But now, I think I really messed up by going ahead and talking to him without even speaking to my mother or my stepsister first. I really wished I would have spoken to her before I said anything to him, but I truly didn't know how to bring this up with her at all. It just felt so awkward that I went back to work the very next day so that I wouldn't have to talk to her, and spent most of my day at work because I had no idea how I could even talk to her about any of this without breaking her heart. She'd been talking about how much she liked this guy already, and how she'd been looking forward to their first date for ages now. It was just so awkward and horrifying for me. I'd believed that my dad would just back off, and my stepsister never would get to know. I don't think the concept of ghosting is acceptable in most cases, but here, I think it would have been the best way for my stepsister to be let down now, but instead, my dad decided to confront my stepsister and told her all about what I'd said to him, and even admitted the truth about his past to her. In the process of doing so, I'd believed that if my stepsister got to know the truth, she'd be shattered and would hate him for it, but instead, things turned out a little differently. The day that I sent my dad that text, I came back home from work early just to clear my head because I hadn't received a response from my dad, but I knew that he'd seen the message. As soon as I stepped into the house, though, my stepsister started screaming and shouting at me about what I'd done. For a second, I didn't even understand what exactly she was screaming about, and it took me a while to realize that my father had told her everything. Instead of being mad at him, though, she was pissed off with me and was telling me that before going to him, I should have told her the truth. And now I'd messed everything up for her. Before I could even explain myself, she told me that she didn't want me around anymore and couldn't even bear to look at me, so I had to leave that very instant. I tried to speak to her, but she just wouldn't have it, and told me that she just didn't want to talk to me at all, and asked me to get the hell out several times, so I finally gave up trying to explain, because she was definitely not in the mood to listen at the time. I packed all my things up and I was out within an hour. I lived at a hotel for the next couple of days, and then moved to a friend's house to stay with her instead, until I found an apartment, which wouldn't be possible at such short notice. I haven't exactly been in touch with my stepsister since that last conversation, and she's blocked me everywhere, so I couldn't reach out to her online either. I did hear from my mother a couple of days back, but even she thinks that what I did was messed up and that I should have talked to them before just going ahead and doing whatever I wanted to. She sounded disappointed in me, and I feel like crap because of what happened, but I honestly think they're not even thinking about what I went through. I understand my stepsister went through a lot with her divorce because her husband cheated on her, and when she finally seemed to be connecting well with a guy she liked, he turned out to be her stepmom's ex-husband. That can't be easy, but I don't think it's fair to take it all out on me instead either. My mother is also keeping her distance from me because she needs time to process the fact that her ex-husband had been talking to her stepdaughter, and I'm the one who's somehow being cast aside, and it feels unfair to me. I don't mean to sound like I'm whining, but it's been several days, and I've been trying my very best to get both of them to talk to me again. My mother hasn't blocked me yet, but she hasn't been responding to me either, and my stepsister blocked my original account but hasn't blocked the other ones I made specifically to talk to her. It's a little stalkerish, but I just wanted them to forgive me because I was afraid that if I gave them space, then I'd never hear from them again. 2 days back, I tried to text my stepsister and even used a different number for it. I apologized to her yet again for everything that had happened and asked her to talk to me just once so I could explain my side of the story, and she finally did respond to me. But it wasn't what I'd thought she'd say. She told me that I was selfish to the very core, and that she should have known that I wasn't capable of thinking of anyone apart from myself. She even brought up what I'd said to her back when she'd first told me about her being on a dating app. How I'd said that she shouldn't care about anyone but herself and put her own happiness first. Apparently she believes that I'm always going to take that advice and apply it to my own life, which makes me incapable of being considerate. She then told me that I needed to stay away because I ruined everything that I touched. I'll admit, I was really hurt by what she said and haven't been able to come to terms with it. It keeps bothering me, and I just can't understand why exactly I'm the bad guy here when it should have been my father instead. Am I the a-hole for confronting my estranged father after he left me 10 years ago, when I realized that he'd been talking to my stepsister without consulting with my mom and stepsister? Update 1. My mother just asked me to visit her today. It's been 3 days since I originally posted here, and I have no idea what she wants to talk to me about. I agreed to see her, but I don't know what to expect at all. I haven't heard back from anyone else, not my stepsister and obviously not my father, so I'm kind of stressed out about this meeting. I did go through the comments on my original post, and I now feel like both of us were in the wrong. Of course, I should have talked to my stepsister and my mother before I went ahead and confronted my dad, but they should have also tried to understand where I was coming from instead of overreacting the way they did and putting all the blame on me. That wasn't fair at all, in my opinion. And I can see that some of you guys think so as well. I've gone above and beyond while trying to apologize to them, but haven't seen the same efforts from their side. And that's really unfair to me because I'm not the bad guy here, my father is, but he's just getting off completely scot-free. I'm still going to talk to my mother because I want to know what she has to say about this, but if they don't think that they did anything wrong, then I might not speak to them after this. Wish me luck, you guys. Update 2. So I just came back home from my mother's place about 3 hours ago. It was a tense meeting, and my stepsister was there as well, but on the bright side, at least they did apologize to me for behaving the way they did and completely ostracizing me. I know I deserved a little flack for going straight to my father and giving him an earful just for the sake of my own closure without speaking to my mother or my stepsister, but they shouldn't have acted like I was the only one who messed up here. What my stepsister said and did wasn't right either, because I'd only hoped that my dad would have the decency to just leave without causing drama, which he didn't. So both of them apologized to me, as did I, but things were still really cold and awkward between us. My stepsister told me that she'd dumped him the very next day and he hadn't tried to get in touch with her after that either. But he had reached out to my mother and given her a lot of crap about what I'd said to him. He told her that he wasn't going to talk to me because he despised me, and didn't want to think about the fact that he was related to me and my mother. He told her that apparently he'd always hated being a part of our lives, and so he'd escaped as soon as I was an adult, and he didn't have to be responsible for me anymore, so now I had no right to question him about his life anymore because we were not related now. That's not really how biology or even society works, but I guess he's a sorry excuse of a man, so his excuses will always be nothing short of miserable. He'd told my mother that neither she nor I was ever supposed to contact him ever again, or he'd report us to the cops, and my mother blocked him without a response. It was awful that he'd said so many horrible things about us, but I'd learnt not to expect much when it came to my father. He was a terrible human being and would always remain one, and I'd accepted that. As for my relationship with my mother and stepsister, and even my stepdad, to a certain extent, we've all decided that we need to give each other some space and work things out on our own before we try to go back to normal. Because there is no way to go back to normalcy after this. At least I don't think there is. I really wish my dad never would have come back at all, because honestly, he ruined everything. I really do love my stepdad and stepsister, and of course my mother and my new family have been my comfort zone for the past couple of years now, but unfortunately, that's going to be put on hold for a while now, all thanks to my father. Update 3. Hello everyone. It's been almost 3 months since my last update. My family and I have decided to go to therapy, both individually and as a family, and have been attending therapy sessions for the past couple of weeks. It was all my mother's idea, and it actually has been helping as far as I'm concerned, so I really think that our relationships are going to get better moving forward. The first couple of weeks after my last update were difficult because we were all barely speaking to one another and everything felt way too tense and awkward, but things did get better with time. I wouldn't say it's all back to normal and we're all a happy family once more because it takes time to heal and we're taking that time out for ourselves now. I just hope that sometime in the future I can come back here and say that things have gone back to normal again, and hopefully that day won't be too far off. Big thanks to you guys for all the lovely advice, comments, and support.